Welcome to another session from the Insights webinar, when we discuss different topics about the importance of data analytics, but together we review what are the tools, what are the technologies that we use as a data visualization specialist, and the most important is what is relevant today, which is, that when you start a new journey, a new path, there's so much information out there, and the thing that I'm trying to do in this webinar for you is to try to understand what is relevant in today's environment. So be with me and I will be presenting this through this webinar. First of all, I want to really thank you for connecting, and if you are seeing the recording, thank you for that as well. Here is in the website from where you can register to the next live session, from where you can bring your questions and when we can review them online as well. This webinar is presented by Excel BI and is hosted by myself. I said that it's hosted and not presented because I will open the microphone for you if you have any questions during this session. The topic that brings us together is why SQL is still relevant in 2025. And it will be, just to summarize a little bit, it will be still relevant for you in 2026. And probably 2030 as well. And the reason why is mainly because there's a huge platforms that are still using SQL, and the great thing for people who've been working in SQL in the last few years is also that together to knowing the basic of SQL, how it used to look like 20 years ago, it become not like an standard, but also an alternative if you are using the cloud computing, especially in the data space. If you want to review data nowadays from cloud solutions like Google, AWS, or Azure, you have options to use SQL in a different format probably to read different tables. So it's still a great tool for exploration of data, but the most important thing is the way how it's structured, make the things really easy to understand. Without further ado, let's start the presentation. And the first thing that I would like to bring it to you is some context about SQL. All right, SQL has been created by Edgar F. Codd during the 1970s, means that has been around more than 50 years. But at the time when this was created, it wasn't a standard back then. However, ISO took over and it turned into a standard in 1987. So that means there are certain commands that you are able to use, or there are certain commands that you will able to standardize if you are creating different platforms. For example, if you were Oracle or Microsoft and you will be using a different kind of commands, ISO allows us to standardize this, and then the commands that works in Oracle will be working in Microsoft. However, they did some slightly small variation, but you still can get the gist and understand the whole concept if you're working either in Oracle, Microsoft, or something like more newer as a Azure Cloud or Fabrics. One of the main characteristics is a declarative language. Some people say that it's not a really programming language, but I disagree with that, because apart from the queries that you can do to discover data, you can also perform certain functions and certain process during the data that it will make transformations. So if you only are using SQL for data transformation, it could be actually enough, because there's many areas from where your data will be transformed in another programming language like Python. However, if you only have a Microsoft SQL database server, from there you will be able to make so many different transformations. So I think I will keep calling it as a programming language, and especially it's called declarative language from the way how it's structured. And what is important in data visualization, we say is highly important because it makes our dashboard so light, it makes it so optimal, and it makes them so easy to create. The reason why is like, for example, if you have 10 different tables, but you only are picking one column from this table, one column from this table, and two columns from this table, creating something called a SQL view, it will bring all the important data into your dashboard. Or even you can slice it out with, for example, if you only would like to pick up the information from the last 3 years, in a SQL view, you will be able to bring just the important data what is required for your dashboard. So this will make, instead of to bring 10 gigabytes of tables into your dashboard, you can just bring 50 megabytes, which is the aggregation from different tables, and it will make the thing so much easier for you as a data visualization expert. And as I just mentioned before, the reason why also SQL is still around the market and it will still there for a while is because most of the data cloud solution incorporate them as one of the programming languages for you to be able to use it to explore, transform, and read data. So it's still highly relevant, and as I said before, it will be highly relevant. A friend of mine told me that if something been in the market for a while, it's the likeliness that it will remain for ages. So it doesn't matter if Python is becoming quite relevant nowadays, or PySpark and other programming languages. I think that because SQL been there for so many years, it's something that will just remain, because it's not any option that it will be switched off from one day to another. So we'll still be dealing with it. It's really easy to program nowadays SQL to the help of some uncertain tools that I will be showing you shortly. But also I will invite you to challenge yourself, practice it, and I also will show you places from where you can practice SQL. 4 reasons to learn SQL nowadays is because it can help you to access to the data directly. For example, if you're doing data exploration and someone just prepared for you certain information that you will be able to access, knowing and understanding SQL, it can open you a whole universe of alternative from the data from the company, for example. If you have just access to certain information and you just know how to read that little piece, you will probably be missing another part from the tables. But tools like, for example, if you have a website or your company has a website, normally their database are based on MySQL or something similar, and they're PostgreSQL. But the thing is, like, you knowing SQL, you will be able to read and understand what is going on behind the website. However, if you don't know SQL, probably you will need to just be happy to use this small set. SQL just open you more possibilities. And as I mentioned before, creating views also helps you with efficiency and performance. Creating another great characteristic of SQL is in the way how the data gets stored. So in the way how, for example, if you have 100 megabyte flat file, and if you move it to SQL, probably that table will be reduced, because in the way how the data gets structured in SQL. And lastly, the efficiency to when you upload into your dashboard also make the thing so much easier, because it works in a columnar level, similar to Parquet files, but instead of to load all the rows, you can load column by column. Another important reason, which is the third reason why SQL is so important nowadays, is because it helps you with complex data preparation. So if you are, even though that you think that SQL could look a bit basic, you can do huge codes with SQL, and you could create different transformation and go through the code, make a sequential, create a temporary tables, functions, and that sort of stuff, and then you will be able to create a whole bunch of instructions that will need to perform over and over again, and this can be easily performed by SQL. And the other thing is, like, all this process is handled by the SQL server, which means that if you are the user and you have your laptop, if you want to perform a heavy query all the load will be taken by SQL. Instead of, for example, if you're using an Excel and you want to do all the transformation, everything gets managed in your own laptop. So if your laptop doesn't have much resources, it will crash. But for example, in SQL, all the CPU, the computing transformation, will go in the server itself. So be careful when you do heavy and chunky transformations, because you will affect other users probably that are using the same SQL server. As I just mentioned as well, it's an industry standard skill. So if you think that understanding and learning data cloud is important, SQL I will put in the same level, because when you go into a company and they go to the interview, they will be asking you about the latest technology, but also it's so important for you to get experience in some legacy technologies. I will say that there's a lot of legacy items in companies sitting in SQL, but also there are still companies creating new tables in SQL. So it's just an industry standard nowadays. So it's really important for you to understand this as one of other tools that you have in your tool set for you to perform a great job at the job and the work that you will be doing. Now I will be presenting you some key concepts, but before of that, I will take a breath because I've been speaking a bit fast. Thank you very much, and also I will take a bit of water. If you have any questions, just hold them for a second. I will be reviewing them shortly in the Q&A part. Okay. As I just mentioned to you before, now we'll be reviewing the key concepts to learn SQL. The main elements that you will see most of the time when you are working in SQL are these ones. First one, commands. There is something called commands in SQL. If you are familiar with other programming languages, are the instructions that will be available for you to perform certain actions within the programming language. One of the most common is join and select. Select is used to read certain data. I will just show you an example in a moment. Join is to join this table within this other table, put it together. Case, in case that you have a certain function and you, for example, if this value is CTA, make it number 1. And if this value is CDB, make it the value as 0. So you can perform certain situations that it will allow you to create certain outputs depending on the value of the row. Then, for example, we have a function that I really like it, which is called callSS. The thing that it does, in case that the value is null, make it something that you will tell what to do with that value. And also you have something that I rely a lot, which is where clauses. So in where statement, you are able to start to slice down the table itself. So for example, if you have a huge table from many years, with a where clause, you will be able to put, for example, just bring me the data from 2025, for example. Another key element from SQL is something called views. We have the views, which are it's something temporal that we create every time that we read it. All right. So for example, if we have 5 different tables, we create a view on top that I will read those 5 tables. And every time that I ask for that view, that I will be reading this information. This view, it won't create a space in your database, which means that, for example, if each table is 1 gigabyte, when you create a view, the view doesn't have any weight because I use the computing performance to read those tables, and that this value will be available for you. So which means that you can make as many views as you want, but just be mindful of the performance of your SQL server. The minimal expression from where your data gets stored are called tables in SQL, and this is the way how the data gets stored. Inside of the tables, you have the columns, and then inside of the of this matrix, you have the rows, of course, and then there are other elements, but I won't want to present you all of them because there are just too many, but those are just the top 5 elements that you will be seeing over and over again. Another important element that I have seen in SQL is called store procedures. Store procedures is a function that helps you to create and perform multiple interactions with the whole tables or whole transformation process, and then do it sequentially, so you can execute those store procedures over and over again and for every day, and then you will be able to transform the data in the way how you would like to be transformed. So a store procedure go affecting columns, tables in a big pieces, instead of functions that go specifically to one row or to a certain columns or to a certain more specifically than ran store procedures. Inside of a store procedures, you can use functions to transform, but also you can use the functions inside of tables, inside of views. Functions can be used either on the store procedures or in the views, but also I would like to present that for you in a second. As you can see, those are the main elements that you will start to listen when you are jumping into the world of SQL, and I think that it's really important for you to have certain clarity on how you will be understanding this in the future. All right, but this is just an overview vision for you. One of the most important elements that I presented to you at the beginning of this presentation, it was about the optimization of using SQL. All right, especially when we're using SQL Views. The reason why is that even though that if we know how to connect to APIs and we bring our Power BI directly connecting with APIs, we'll be pulling data that it just will be a heavy lifting from our Power BI, which will make it really heavy and unstable. So if you want, for example, you want to pull the data from a third-party API, and that API is broken for the time that you want to refresh your dashboard, that means that probably, for example, it's getting refreshed and it crashed in the middle. Probably all the data, you will end up with a dashboard in blank. Or for example, if the data didn't pass through a curation stage, it will create probably not the size that you're looking for. So that is why, for example, if you have a dashboard purely created on filtering tables, mainframe data, Excel sheets, or API, it will end up to be quite heavy. However, if we're using SQL Views, it will make the dashboard so much light, and your customer or your stakeholders will love it because it will end up to be more easy to go through it. And if you would like to see the insights, everything will work much smoothly and faster. If you want to learn more about these topics and other topics, we have courses, and also we provide micro courses. And lastly, I will help you to access to the platform to access to different webinars. So if you are not registered yet, you will receive an email after this session from where you can register to future events, to more information about courses or micro credentials, and all the free information that we have accessible for you. If you are part of our registration list, that means that you will be receiving emails so on then rewarding to the files that we review during this presentation and other important. So now jumping into the practical experience, let's see how a SQL database look like. As you can see, we are connecting locally. This is a software called SSMS, which is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. This tool, you can download it completely for free. You don't need to have any license. And the thing that it helps us to do within this tool is a interface that will allow you to connect to multiple SQL servers. Or if you would like to connect to different kind of environments, also this will allow you to do it. So here I have a connection to one SQL server. However, you could have 10, 15, 20 different SQL servers. So this way, you can have inside of this part, which is called database, you can have also multiple databases within one server. One server, let's think, is a one computer. Nowadays can be even virtual, so don't be focused that is one server, one actual computer. But instead of the SQL server, you can have multiple databases. So for example, if you would like to have certain separation between HR data or sales data or customer data, you can have a separation in different databases. However, for this example, I'm using one database provided by Microsoft that you can use it as an example. This SQL database, you can download it from Microsoft, and you have all the steps there for you to start to play around within this table. All right. So let me show you the elements when you connect to SQL. I won't go through security and other elements, which is not part of this webinar, so I won't confuse you with that, because something that is part also from data engineers from your company or SQL database administrators, so probably you will have access to those spaces. So let's jump directly into the database. Inside of the database, we have certain folders. Within those folders, we will have the elements that I just discussed to you before. All right. The first elements that we'll see are the tables. Those are which is relevant for us. And if you can still drilling down, we'll see the columns that are inside of the table. All right. Here you can see the column name and the way of data type that is saved. All right. For example, this is a daytime. So if I just do select a star from, and I just drag and drop this, can you see that this star means that it will be reading all columns without any filtering? And here I'm saying select all, read all from this column. This first part that we can see here is the schema, which means that, for example, we have a human resources schema, we have person schema, we have production schema. All those schema, which is the first part of your table name, it will put a certain context and naming convention on the data, how it's structured in your database. This is a really good way to structure the information, and it will help you a lot to separate human resources with person. For example, you can give it access to a specific people, to a specific schemas. In this case, we just have human resources, and I will read the department table. And if I just do this and click execute, I will be able to see and read the table content that is inside of this table. All right. But if I would like to perform filtering, or for example, I would like just to read those two columns, I will just call them like this, name. And as you can see, this get automatically populated. You see, it shows there. I just make double click there. And then to read the other column, or I just can do this. You see, we'll get all the columns. But the other thing I can do just to do a group, because that was the other column name, and I will populate by itself, and just click here, and I will click select. But for example, if we would like to read information from just one specific group name, we can do where clause. Actually, it's a recommendation that all the commands in SQL should be right in capital, and the tables and the other element in lowercase. So let's keep it this convention for now. And where, which means I will start to slice in the table. I will say group name equal, because I know this is a bar chart, which means it's a text. I will need to write the information inside of it with single quotation, okay? And then I just will write research and development. All right. And if I do this, it's not working because I have a grammar mistake. and it needs to be exactly how it's written within the table. All right, then it works. But what about if I just know the first part of the word that I want to filter it? So we can use something called like, and then we will be looking for anything that starts with the word research. And I will delete this other part. And using the like, you need to use something, the percentage symbol, and this means that whatever that start with this, just find it and filter it, and you will see this. But for example, if I would like to do this, it will make us anything that starts with the word R. However, if I do this, it means that it will filter any columns, any rows that it contain the letter R, which is really broadly. So probably with this one, it will bring many items. As you can see, manufacturing, it has the letter R contained on it. And also when you do the research, the word close doesn't differentiate if it's a capital or lowercase. So it will be looking for everything, okay? However, if you have a numeric value, for example, if I do a select star again, for example, I would like to filter when the department ID is 10, all right? So department ID equal 10. Now, because this is a number, I don't need to write it inside of the quotation. If I just do this, you'll see it will be filtered. However, if I do this, it will still work because it do automatically the transformation between this into number. So if you just want to do the number, you just do this. But if you would like to do the filtering by the date, you will need to write the date in this format, all right? So where modify date is equal to 2008 0430, all right? This is the way how the raw format, how the date columns get stored in SQL. And even if I don't put nothing next to it, it means that I am just bringing the value 0000, which is the time, all right? However, if I do this, I'm gonna separate it and do at 01 a.m. 0000, which means zero time, but 1 a.m. after 000. The thing that will happen here, it won't bring me anything, all right? But if I say it's less than that, it will bring all the values because this value is greater than 0 and it will bring it, right? But if I do greater or greater, it won't bring it. But the thing I can do less or equal to as well, or also I can do different than, all right? This putting less or greater symbols, it will bring which is all the values that are not equal to it. So as you can see, SQL is quite simple to use, I would say, but if you want to get into complexity, you will be able to find complexity. For example, if we go to this store procedure, as you remember, I just explained you, those are functions that go through your data. You can see here that the code can get more complex. And here is the declaration of the store procedure name. Here is just a variable creation. Yeah. SQL also allows you to pass through certain variables, so this is really handy when you're creating transformation. And the other thing, that element that it has SQL that I like it, is something called begin and try. So for example, if you try to perform all those functions, you could start, instead of to say begin, you could do a begin and try, and within that it will do something, but if it doesn't work, it will don't do anything, or it could perform another function, all right? A with statement in SQL is a procedure that it helps you to create a temporary table. So in that, I'll call it CTEs. In that way you can do transformation partially. In that way you cannot like instead of to do a huge query, just go step by step, and that way your code also looks more readable for others. As you can see here, if I just run this, it won't work because it will fail because I don't have this function declarative. So I just want to show you how a stored procedure looks like. I don't know if I have any function created here. Let's see. Yeah, there are certain functions here. I just do right click and review it. And in this function, it converts the datetime into this date. It will convert it into datetime. So if you want to perform this function, you can just use it and it will perform this specific format. SQL, you can do data type transformation, you can do aggregation, you can do left join, right join, inner join, but the one that I always use is something called left join. So for example, if we like to do a select star from human resources dot, let's say if I go to the tables and I go to human resources and I go to employees, I will just delete this one because when I drag and drop it, it gets duplicated. So I just do this. As you can see here, this is all fictitious data that come from this database. There's nothing that I'm sharing with. But if you can see, there's a national ID number. And also should be a business entity ID, and it should be something called, I'm just looking for a job title, organization level, organization node, login ID, birth date, national ID. I'm looking for something to join within other table. For example, if I have employee, department history, job candidate, shift, and for example, if I have the department, I would like to know this person to which department belong. But here there is no a clear key to join it. Group name, department ID. You should have a column called department ID to be able to do the join. However, it doesn't have it. So let's see if we have a business entity, contact type, employer, job department history, columns, end date, chief department ID. Okay, department ID is linked with this department ID. So I think here I can do a join. All right. If I just go to this table and just drag and drop this one here, I won't use that one anymore. All right. As you can see here, I have something called department ID, but I don't have nothing else. But if we would like to do a join with another information to enrich the view that I created, I could create this one as and put a alias, and that way I don't need to keep writing the same name. So I will call this employee department history. And I will do a left join, which means that bring me the values who are in this side into this table. So left join human resources dot department as, also will put an alias here, and I will call it just D. And here I need to tell where those tables will be joined. This is something equivalent to VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP in Excel. So if you are familiar with that, this will come really easy for you. On EDH dot, which is the reference from this table. As you can see, this table, and it is populated right away the column that I want to join with. I need to find the similarity, so I just need to do the connection here. And D, which is the other table, and we'll find the same value. As you can see here, now instead of to have just those values, if I run this, you will see that this table grow because now I could enrich it, join it with another table. And I create this one as a view. Create view, and we'll call human resources dot sample view Excel MVI as human resources And if I run this, it doesn't work. Column names on each department ID. Okay, so I need to specify a EDH. I will explain this in a second. Comma D dot star. Okay, it says that the column has been specified more than once. I will just do this D dot name, and that's all. You know that when you do live interactions, never works as supposed to work. Human resources review. All right, here we go. All right, I will explain you in a second what I did. I just want to show you that this, you can do this now. All right. The thing that I have done, as you can see in this table only, I only had all those columns, all right? And I didn't have this column. The way how I could enrich this table and bring all those values, it was to do a join with this other table. And the way how I did it, I connected within the department ID. The reason why it was complaining when I was trying to create the view, it was because I was bringing this department ID more than one in the table, and I create some conflict within the join that we were creating. So to be able to make it work for this time, I just brought one unique column, which was enough to bring you the information that you want to bring. However, if you just want to bring, for example, the department ID and the EDH dot start date, I can just do this, and because this is already created, I need to alter the view. And now if you can see, this was less columns. But this is the way how you show the columns from the query that you're doing. As you can see here, now it's more readable. Be mind that always when you write your code, make it really readable for others, so it's really easy for understand. And in this way, we create a view, and we just brought those 3 columns. And here I could change the name of the column in a friendly way. For example, department. Instead of call it department ID, I will call department only. All right. In here, I will call the start date as equal the start date. All right. In this format, is more readable than instead of to put all together, especially when you are putting, for example, in Power BI. And this one, I will just keep it as it is. All right. And if I run this, it will still bring those columns. However, it will be presenting them with the new columns names that we just presented. All right, and that is the way how SQL works. If you would like to do a similar environment in your own computer, you can download this database from Microsoft from free, and also install SSMS in your computer. However, if you have something like Mac or Linux, probably this one, it will be a bit not really straightforward. So you can learn SQL also from different websites that gives you the way to testing and the access to testing different tables that they have available for you. For example, one of them is W3 School. That one, it gives you the access to an environment that you can play with SQL queries within your web browser. For example, you can do it from your tablet, or you can do it even from your phone nowadays. And I hope that you get clarity now on what SQL. a huge amount of information available for you. Most of the information is for free, but also if you would like to take the next step and go deep in a specific topic, you can buy one of our courses. So thank you very much for joining this webinar. If you have any question, don't hesitate to send me an email or send an email to contact@excellenvi.com. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.